do, and people are so used to doing it that it's hard.
Yeah, and it's that air of privacy. That, this is my Facebook page. This is,
Right.
my LinkedIn page. So people aren't thinking about the stuff that they put out there.
It's only my friends. Well, but how do you know your friends don't copy that and put it on their page or send it to somebody else? Oh, yeah, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, we've never seen a tweet go bad, right?
Right, exactly.
Never seen a tweet go bad. We've never seen a Facebook posting end up on somewhere where it shouldn't have been.
Somebody else's Facebook site, right. But I think that they just don't think beyond that next step. And again, I think it's because, as a security guy, I'm always paranoid and thinking about all the bad things that could happen, and they're not. I mean, that's what makes us weird as security guys.
Well, but here's a great example. It was very interesting. We were reading an article the other day and talking about it, and it was an article on Dell, and it talks about how Dell spent some $27 million on security protocols for Michael Dell, so that people couldn't find out where he was, kidnap him, and all this kind of stuff. Yet his son and daughter were tweeting everything that they were doing and everywhere they were. So they were sitting there going, "I'm at dinner with my dad at Luciano's in New York." And so here's Dell Security trying to protect him, and here's his kids tweeting everything that they're doing. And
Dad's in China. Oh,
yeah,
great.
Dad's inside. Come steal him. Come take him right now. And so those are the kind of things that we deal with. And from TI, obviously there's a tremendous amount of intellectual property sitting within TI, and we want cross collaboration. We want that synergy that comes from that. But at the same time, where do you draw the boundaries? How do you define when someone can share and someone can't share, even within TI?
Right. So some of that is driven by our data classification program, where we've taken the time to go through our our data and classify it into certain categories. And the categories that are at the highest classification, you don't really get a choice. I mean, we're going to lock that down. We're going to
Right.
put that in a very secure location. And if it's painful to get to, I'm sorry. But that's the data that we, especially at the executive level, have said needs to be protected. And a lot of the other stuff, it's through awareness, right? We do a lot of awareness and training with our engineers to recognize some of that. It's monitoring. I may not necessarily stop you from sending that email or making that post, but if it has certain keywords, or if it's going to a certain area, or if it crosses a certain threshold, it's your 10th email or your 10th print job, maybe I send you a little note and just remind you, hey, are you sure you should be sending that? Or, is there a reason that you're printing out, 10 schematic diagrams in the same day? And there could be a very valid reason. They could be doing an archive project, they could have a review coming up, and everything's fine. Or it may not be.
Right.
In some cases, I don't send it to them. I send it to somebody else. I send it to that person's boss. Does it bother you that so-and-so is doing X? And he may go, nope, I told him to do that. Or he may go, hey, that's odd. Tell me more. So it's providing those managers and those business leaders with information to make informed decisions about, is that the right behavior or the wrong behavior, rather than just making it an all or nothing block or unblock.
Yeah, and I think it's critical that people, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
And we in cybersecurity talk a lot about what's happening today. But why I came is because I love mentoring kids. But what I wanted Brian to address was, okay, he has QA team and all these teams that now are involved in security. What does he think the next job description or the next educational avenue for UTD to go down in order to help educate those kinds of people? And would he hire them? It's like the QA guys are no longer a QA guy anymore.
Right.
You're a security QA guy. So are we going to train those people? And I think that's a part of that awareness that we have to build in universities like this.
And we're going to talk about that here in just a couple of minutes.
That's a good
Yeah,
No, that was
all
good. I like that. That was very good. That's good. But I want to finish up on this first before we go there. Because one of the issues is, and I agree with you, one of the biggest issues that companies are not doing is they're not doing, to me, what is a fundamental issue, and that is stratification of data, of knowing what is secure data. It's so easy, I guess, to collect data.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's collecting data, but nobody's really categorizing data. They aren't coming up with what needs to be secure versus what doesn't need to be secure. Now, you described TI's process, which is very good and very laid out.
Which
right?
took us about 4 years to design.
Right.
So it was a long effort.
But then there's also, on a global scale, there's also regulatory issues in terms of securing data and in making data available in certain situations. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's probably the most frustrating part of my job, is trying to understand all these privacy regulations and global regulations. It's not like, I don't know, anybody ever hear of PCI? Are you familiar with that, payment card industry? So what's nice about that is they get pretty prescriptive, right? You need to scan, you need to run this scan, you need to put this software in place. A lot of these privacy regulations, they're very vague. It's so open to interpretation. So if you happen to get a lawyer who's very, conservative, then he's going to read into that all kinds of controls and things you need to put in place. Whereas somebody else will go, that's no big deal. Don't worry about it.
Right.
So I think that's the frustrating part with these laws, is they're all over the place in how you interpret them. And they're also, again, the legal department, the whole law space is so far behind technology that it's really frustrating in how these things get interpreted.
Well, and how do you deal with it if your data is sitting in China, but your servers are sitting, your data's there in a data center, but your application servers are sitting, let's say, in the United States, right? You've got a front-end application, you're on a plane flying from here to England, and you're halfway over the ocean, and you're using an iPad to access that data. Okay, so tell me who's responsible for it.
It's whoever's the best negotiator. It's what I've learned, is because, yeah, right, because the bad guy could be in one country, the data's in another country, the web server app that he used to access it's in another one. Our company is incorporated in a different area, so you've got all these players, and what it comes down to is who can make the best case for why it should be in this country or the other. Is it because, well, the majority of the records that were compromised came from here, or the web page is only in English, and so the expectation was that it was an English site even though the database was in a server in France. So that's why I say it's so frustrating. It's, boy, I hope you can negotiate really well, or a lot of times they'll say, Brian, give me as much information or as much ammunition as I can to make this case. Okay, I'll see what I can do.
So does TI then have a strategy that says, this is what we consider to be highly critical data, and it can only be physically located in these particular countries or in these particular geographic areas, or do they go that far into it? Because I was just thinking in terms of, you look at some of the laws. There's some laws in India, there's some laws in China that are very specific about, if the data's there and the government asks for it, you have to give it.
Right.
So does that come into play in terms of where you locate things?
It does now. It didn't 5-6 years ago.
Right.
But I think that's the change that we're going through, is we're getting smarter about, asking security questions before we decide, that may be the cheapest place to build a data center, but from a capital investment standpoint or maybe from a resource standpoint, but total cost, is that really the right place for that to go? So security's starting to play into more and more of these business decisions than it ever did in the past.
So it's really becoming more, security's really for TI becoming a strategic issue.
Absolutely. Even when you get into things like mergers and acquisitions, I'm on the mergers and acquisitions team now, and have been for the last 4 years. Again, for that very reason. What are we assuming? When we acquire a company, are we acquiring a bunch of legal issues or other vulnerabilities that are going to essentially wipe out any advantage bringing that company on board may have? So it's becoming a big deal. So
the industry has changed a great deal. We're no longer let me go find a better firewall. Let me go find a better. We're not tech support anymore, right? Security is really a business decision. It's really a strategy within the company on how you're going to approach doing business.
Yeah, it's much less now about what technology you're using. Before, there used to be really big debates about whether you should have Symantec versus McAfee versus Kaspersky, and now it's just, do you have AV? Right?
Right.
And how are you using that? How rapidly are you responding to alerts? Are you using a managed service? Are you going to build your own team to do the virus analysis. That's where the discussion is now, not necessarily about which piece of software you're buying.
Okay, so let's go to the question that was asked down here then. If the industry has changed, we're obviously a university, we want to put the right people in front of TI to hire, and in front of other companies to hire. What should we be looking at in terms of security professionals? If we're talking about, data security, information security, what should these guys have if they want to make a career out of this field?
So I think there's two ways of looking at it. So one, my team at TI, I mean, we're 30, 40,000 employees and contractors worldwide. I have a team of 15 people who work full-time dedicated to IT security. But if you add up the folks on the network team and the client team and the database team, et cetera, that also play a role in security, whether that's half their role, 25%, what case, I mean, that number balloons to about 85 or 95.
Right.
Right. So for you is where do you want to play? If you want to be a software developer, can you learn good security techniques in that software development life cycle? When you write software, are you thinking not just about how fast can I get it to compile? Is it going to meet all the functional specs? Have I documented it well? But how can I break it? What would happen if this? Could a bad guy do that? Same thing with network. If you're a network engineer, think about the network security aspect of it. So that's one area. Then the second area, if you want to be a pure play security person, you've got to have a technology background, have some type of IT or networking or development foundation, and then we can go teach you to be security professionals and curious and paranoid and all that other good stuff. You got a question?
Yeah, think about the academic aspect of this for a moment. Microsoft Mars team today announced that they had been finding computers shipping from manufacturers pre-virus. Cisco has announced that they're seeing routers shipping from their factories pre-virus. And thinking about things like Oracle and the problems today with Java. What is the relationship that TI strives to have with the security community, and specifically in regards to DMCA and the research community? What is your approach to dealing with the research capability that's already present, and how you allow some transparency or coordination with that community?
So we work real closely with a lot of those vendors and suppliers that you just mentioned, with Cisco and Oracle and things of that nature on security, as well as through semiconductor type organizations. I know we've invested quite a bit here at the university in trying to build that out. And then I try to be active in the IT security arena here locally as well.
That's an understatement, by the way.
So is that what you're...
He's incredibly active.
Let's say there's a disclosure pending on secure technology.
Okay.
What is your approach to dealing with the academic community on dealing with that disclosure?
Disclosing it to the academic community?
To the public community at large. There's a TI chip that's out there. We know it has a security vulnerability. It's going to take you a certain amount of cycles to deal with it. But yet there's a researcher that has interesting research that shows this problem's out there. Given DMCA, what has been your policy on sort of addressing that and bringing that research to life?
Oh, so sure. So we've done that before when it comes to certain encryption activities and things of that nature. So yeah, we work with certainly our strategic suppliers, again, to make sure that they get brought into that loop real quickly. And then we've disclosed those types of things where we needed to. Yeah.
Hang on a second. No, because and the reason I'm stopping you guys is not that I don't want to have the discussion. I really do, but this is webcast, and if you're talking and you don't have a microphone in front of you, nobody can hear you on the webcast. So all they're going to hear is us responding to you, but they're not going to hear you. And so we want to make sure we capture everything. So just bear with us, and I promise everybody will get a chance to answer every question you want, or at least some of them, okay? And we'll make sure everybody gets as much chance as possible. But
go back
to talking about the education component, because one of the things that to me is we've been dealing with, we're seeing security move from hardcore computer science to more strategic. And I'm curious as to how that's translating. Obviously, it's lifelong education, you know, so organizations like ASACA and ISSO and ISSA and stuff are imperative to here. But the role the university plays in that is not just one of education, but one of continual training, because it's going to change very rapidly. So how do you see that? I mean, do you see that as it's going to become more and more, people are going to need to understand not just the technology, but the business side of it as well? Or are they going to need to understand the strategy? I mean, you talked about the legal implications, the governance, the regulatory and oversight stuff. Is that part of what everybody's going to need to know going forward?
They either need to know it or know how to go have the conversation with the people who know that. And I think that's been the difficult transition for our team, is if you have those pure hardcore technology people, it's hard for them to go talk to the HR manager, the legal director, and have come to that compromise of what's the right risk trade-off decision. And so where I see success is on the people who tend to become more, they've grown up and become more of architects, you know, or more system integrators. That type of role makes a nice transition into IT security, is what I've seen.
Because they have a better understanding of the business rules.
Because they have and they also have a better understanding of the whole system. It's not just, you know, I understand Cisco routers, but I understand the network topology and how it's laid out and how it interplays with radius and et cetera. And so they're able to look at it from a security point of view. And then if you really need somebody to go figure out how that translates into a firewall ACL, okay, well, we've got people for that.
Right.
But I need that person who can step back. And it's almost like being right on the edge of paranoid. You know, you don't want to, you know, I don't want to say the sky is falling, because I spend a lot of my time talking people down from, you know, being worried about, hey, I need to just turn off my cell phone and never go back on the internet.
On the ledge, right?
Right. You know, because you'll read news articles about how, oh, if you go to China, you know, when you get back, you just throw your BlackBerry away because it's been hacked and compromised, and they can read everything that's on your phone when you walk through the airport. And I'm thinking, no way. If they're that good, then I might as well quit my job because I have no chance, right? What they fail to tell you is that, well, they probably have Bluetooth enabled, and they had to have downloaded this app that had a Trojan horse so that you could connect to it. But they don't mention that in the article. So people think, oh, the game's lost. Why do I even try? So I spend a lot of time. It's not that bad. You know, the internet still will be up tomorrow. But you need somebody who can think that way. Okay, well, wait a minute. If I do turn Bluetooth on, is that a problem? And if I turn it off, does that cause problems for the business users? Or if I do turn it on, can I put some security around it, or at least make this person aware, or load like MDM software on it so that when Bluetooth gets turned on, it beeps or it does something. You know, you need people who can think of all these different possibilities and combinations in a security type role.
Right. So how do we build, to use your words, how do we build the paranoia into the degree programs? Because one of the comments you've made in the past, and I'll refer back to this, you've talked about the fact that there's just not enough security materials available in terms of the degree programs, in terms of the training and education that's out there. So talk a little bit about that, why that statement, you know, and how do we go about fixing that?
Yeah, so you know, why do you have to go to SANS, which is a great organization and they have wonderful training programs, but why isn't some of that training information getting filtered into, you know, CS400 at the universities or whatever the case may be? You know, what is it that stops that from getting incorporated into the program? Is it because you have to meet certain state or U.S. regulations for course material? Is it just you can't add material fast enough because by the time you get it added, that virus is so old school it's not worth teaching anymore? I don't know. But that's what I'm wondering is how does that get into the program?
I think that's part of it. At a public university, obviously it takes time to create new courses and stuff. We try to work around that. Nobody tells the legislature that, but we try to work around that somewhat and make sure we're as state of the art as we can be. And that's what we try to do here. I think one of the issues for us is, to try to get something in the classroom that is broad enough to where it's a learning objective, not just a training tool, but at the same time state-of-the-art enough to where the students can use that when they walk out the door. And I think that's the catch-22 for us in any of the technology fields, because they are changing so rapidly. And that's part of the reason that I was asking the questions about strategy and how does that come into play, because as we build the learning objectives into the curriculums and then into the individual courses, it's not so much that we run out and grab the latest tool. We can do that. Right? But, if you're teaching a course on, on security, the student has to learn the tool somewhere. And if you take time in the course to teach the tool, every hour you take to teach the tool is an hour you're not teaching how to use it. Right? So that kind of thing. So where do we, is there a happy medium here? Is there a combination of education and training then? Because we do that a lot in different areas. Where we could bring in some of the SANS stuff and we could do some of what the university is doing and maybe do a combination of that?
Yeah, I think that's good. Another thing that I thought has worked pretty well is there's a course up at North Texas University, criminal justice program, and I know the physicals, it's more around physical security, corporate physical security, but I go up there and lecture once a semester about IT security. So is that an opportunity for some of these universities, is to tap